Right. All right. Well, welcome to Transformation Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. Isn't that wild? It's 2024. And yes, and Transformation Tuesday began back in March 2020. You believe it? And we've been coming live with guest speakers every Tuesday with experience, strength, and hope on different subjects. And there's this March 2024, at least for me, in some ways feels very different from 2020. Some ways we're just coming out of different things. So my name's Judy Matejcek, Life Master Consultant and world-class paradigm shifter. And paradigm shifters, we are a growing global community dedicated to shift and uplift the entire planet. How's that for? And we're about 1,700 strong right now. And every year, I get downloaded a different overall theme. And for 2024, the theme is opening doors in 2024. And so for March, we are opening doors in 2024 called Allowing New Growth. How's that, Pat?
That's great.
Yeah, amen. And I'm going to introduce Pat, but before we get going, I found a little reading in A Year of Miracles that I feel is really appropriate to begin this March discussion. And it's a little reflection on the alchemy of personal transformation. And I'm going to read it. It's when we face the darkness squarely in the eye, in ourselves and in the world, that we begin at last to see the light. And that is the alchemy of personal transformation. In the midst of the deepest, darkest night, when we feel most humbled by life, the faint shadow of our wings begin to appear. Isn't that beautiful?
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I am so pleased to welcome Pat Acklie-Roth to begin our March journey on, allowing new growth. And let me tell you a little bit about Pat. She is, she has a consulting business, Pat Acklie-Roth Coaching and Consulting. But Pat has served others for 58 years. Wow. As a cosmetologist, a dressmaker, transformational life coach, and life mastery consultant, an author, and grief recovery specialist. I love it that the summers she's in her sewing studio in Nebraska and also coaching with winners in the Rio Grande Valley, coaching full times. So I want to just hone in on this part. You've studied with so many people, but this is where you're uniquely qualified to be, coming in and talking about your experience. Pat lost her son in 1996, her mother in 2020, her brother in 2021, and her husband in 2021, and her sister in 2022, and also her best friend of 71 years in 2024, and brother-in-law in 2024. So she contacted the Grief Recovery Institute after the death of her husband in 2021, and I love it that you became a licensed grief recovery specialist, helping others transition from grief to rebuilding a new life. So very rewarding. And you see the potential growth in others as you're calling. So, and that's so beautiful. So come on in here and tell us, maybe some of your whys, who you are. It's just a beautiful journey you've been on. Come on in, Pat. It's all yours.
My life is much like a stair step. Excuse me. I was in Nebraska sewing, doing fine. I loved what I was doing. And I got an email, and it was from Mary Morrissey. I'd previously taken a class under Jean Houston. In Mary's class, I became a dream builder. Then I went on to become a coach. But several years later, then I wanted more. And someone that is wanting to learn things and go forward, they're always wanting that little bit more, whether it's knowledge or contact with people. And every one of those steps that I've gone into has not just given me something to tell other people, but it's made me grow. And like when John died, 9 days after my brother, I didn't have a soft place to fall. A friend of mine was a grief recovery specialist. So I contacted them. I went through the course, which was wonderful for me because it gave me the insight of what I was going through. And I became licensed through them. But to become licensed through them, you have to go through the course. We have to know what other people are feeling and what they're looking at. And, a lot of it goes back to Mary, too. Notice what you're noticing. I was in a 30-year marriage. I noticed that I wasn't happy. And a day hit me. I could not go any further. I had to make a decision. And you're always going to make progress when you make a decision, but you cannot do it without making a decision, whether it's in life or whether it's in grief. If someone has just lost their spouse and you're in what you call a widow's fog, you're not thinking really clearly, it's a rough spot to be. And hopefully you've got trusted people around you. But we have to watch what we're thinking and be aware of that, whether it's in life or whether it's in going through the death. Because we need to be aware of what's going on. I had someone a year later said, I was at your husband's funeral. And I said, I'm sorry. I couldn't tell you who was at the funeral. You're just in a fog. So, and like they give you the pictures, the video that they show at the funeral right ahead of time and during visitation. And one day, not long after John died, I watched the one of my mom, and it was sad, but she was 78, almost 3 weeks shy of 78. Or 98, I'm sorry, 98. And then I felt sad, but I was happy for her. And then I watched my brothers, and I cried like a baby. And then I watched my husband's, and I was sad, but I didn't cry that much. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I'm crying more over my brother than I was my husband. Of course, I'd been crying for John anyway. But what I rationalized it out to be was that it was what we call delayed grief. Not always at the moment, because my brother and my husband were on the same floor, and I was going back and forth. And when my brother died, I was so busy taking care of my husband that I didn't have the time to grieve for my brother. And I think that's what hit me when I watched that video that day. And it was really therapeutic for me. But because of the training that I'd had as a life coach, I understood it. All that training as a life coach is carried over into the grief, because if I could take them through the grief process and they come out feeling better, more in control of their life, then they're more willing to go on and rebuild their life, because you do. Half a year is gone. And especially someone that has been married for a long time. It takes a process. But it's rewarding to me. It's very rewarding. I had one couple, she had contacted me, and a doctor had said, well, I can tell you, give you the name of a doctor here in this local town, and he could help you. And she said, no, I want a woman. I want a woman who's lost a child. And she contacted me. And I had a miscarriage. I lost my son, 23 years, and not just other families too. I had lost so many people. But what we started out as grief for the loss of the daughter, when we got in digging deeper, what it boiled down to is that she and her husband were not grieving together. He just clammed up and she cried a lot. They were not meeting. Therefore, they were not growing in the same direction. And when we dug that out and got them communicating more and doing some good, deep talking, everything changed. And many times we'll bury that stuff and just go on thinking, well, nobody else is worried about it. Why should I worry about it? We need to express our feelings. And it's so much better to get it out. Trusted friend, seek help if you have to, your pastor. Although I've given demonstrations and talks on grief at my church down here. And I said, don't they give you training on that, becoming a pastor? And he said, no. I was shocked. That's the first person I called. So I thought that was really important to notice that. And hopefully that made him a little more aware that he would dig into it more.
You said something about that really, you just said something about delayed grief. And when I was, with this little introduction, I was thinking, wow, 2020, right? And all of the people that passed away, died, and we just kept going forward and going forward. And for me, there was not enough bandwidth for me, at least, to cry and grieve as more and more people. And perhaps now that in 2023 we're starting to breathe, in 2024, and I'm finding myself, I don't want to say finally crying, just crying and like crying that I'm so grateful to be alive, to be this. So can you tell me a little bit about the delayed grief and maybe how it shows up in people, or to make it, for our paradigm shifters, I don't want to say to make it be okay, but to tell them that it's normal, or something about what that word is.
Yeah.
Why we might be feeling that in 2024.
Yeah. Delayed grief is like if you're so busy doing things, like my brother-in-law just passing away. His wife had a house full of furniture, activities going on for at least a good week. She didn't really have time to sit down to herself and mourn. So it might be because other things are going on and you don't want to show your emotions. And some people don't show their emotions. I had a friend that lost her husband and she had two smaller children. She said, I cry in the shower so they won't see me cry. At the time, I thought, well, that's being a good mom. Now, I don't agree with that, because when they see you cry, that lets them know that you're human and it's okay for them to cry. If they're not allowed to cry when they're a child, they could carry that grief all the way into adulthood, and it could come out in one way or the other, because it's like a beach ball. You can hold underwater for so long and your arms get tired and it's going to pop up. And delayed grief can do that same thing. And it might come out as anger, relationships, but you don't realize it's the delayed until you really get to deep digging in there. It's fascinating. Fascinating.
What are some safe ways to that maybe you suggest, or you've seen people, safe ways to get those feelings out? And I'm guessing that you're saying sooner than later is what I'm hearing, right?
It
What
is.
have you seen? Yeah.
Well, like last spring, down here, this is a retirement park, and I put on a 8-week class for people who had lost their spouse. So they all had that in common, that they'd lost a spouse, but everyone grieves different. And in this class, we had one man, my brother-in-law, because my sister had just died November before that. So, and there was 7 of us. So it was really interesting. He could see how the women were mourning. They could see how he was mourning. And even the 2 women, you can have 2 women say we're sisters and you had a good relationship with your mother and I didn't. We're not going to mourn the same way. So there could be family members that mourn different too. But it was really interesting. And you get a camaraderie when you get in a group like that, because they understand what you're feeling and you learn to grow. And we had laughter, we had tears, And even now, I'm going to have another reunion, just an afternoon to see how far they've come in a year. I can see it, but many times we don't even realize our own growth unless someone points it out. So as long as they know they're still growing and they're going on and they're getting out there, they're going to dances and meals, we get together here, meals and stuff, but getting out of the house. We have one lady that's here, lost her son a year and a half ago, and she is still so deep in grief. I contacted her. She said, I don't want to talk to anybody. She was angry. Now Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote the book on death and dying and talked about the stages of death. That led up to the death. And she stressed that these are not after the death. It's before the denial, the anger, the bargaining, acceptance. I forget what the other one is. Some of those things can carry over because when someone passes away, they might be mad at God because God took their loved one. And they need to work through that. And every situation, there's a seed of goodness. Like my brother-in-law, he was a wonderful man and he will be greatly missed. And he said, I want all my children there together when I have my service. He knew it was coming. And they were. All 5 of the children, the grandchildren, we had a house full. But that's what he wanted. So yes, it was sad that we lost him, but it was great that the family was together exactly the way that he wanted it done. And, some families, they'll have differences and they don't speak for years. But if this brought them closer, that's the seed of goodness that came out of a sad situation. But sometimes we have to really dig for it and look for it. And sometimes someone else has to point it out for us. We don't see it.
So, if you could talk about the new growth after that you've seen, I also worked with, at least in the last year, parents who have lost children to addiction, right? And I mean that's proof. And I've watched them, this one in particular, coming out of it because she was allowed to talk about him in a positive way. And, and I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful young, beautiful. Everybody's a beautiful soul, period. Yeah. But, and then the new growth, where, it's like springtime here, and we're just seeing like the little sprouts coming up. And, we've learned that there's this area underneath that has to grow first before the new growth comes. Mm-hmm. Where have you seen some new growth in people who have allowed themselves to go through the process?
I had one lady, an elderly lady, I'm not going to give all the two details, but she had been married for a long time and her husband died. So that was one loss. But then she found out after he had died that he was living a double life. That's 2 losses. Loss of trust. And then found out that the house she was living in, he had formerly bought for his mistress. And at that time, you lose the trust, but you wonder, how else were they lying? What were they lying about? If they would lie about something that major. So, you lost the trust, you lost the marriage, you lost the person. And I told her, she said, there's a big picture of him hanging on the wall. And I said, this week, I want you to go to that picture and I want you to tell me exactly what's on your mind. Just let it out. And then next week, she was so happy. And, they thought she was bipolar, so they put her on meds. I said, oh, don't be so quick to label her. She's had tremendous loss. And when you've got multiple losses like that, whether it's all at the same time, where they're very close together, it's hard. It's hard to look positive. And she said, well, I keep waiting for another low to hit. And I said, you're not going to have another low. Just tell yourself, you're going forward, you're getting better, you're not going to have another low. She did not have another low. And I don't think she was bipolar. But update, she has moved out of that condo. She lives near her daughter, and she's happy. She was smiling. She looked 10 years younger. It's their face, because when we're stressed or something like that, our face will tend to draw up. She was relaxed. She was able to talk about it, how she felt, whether it was good or whether it was bad. But when you could see them bloom like that, it is so rewarding, because then I enter into the life coaching.
Yeah.
Once they've gotten through that grief journey, then we can go into building the new life and what they'd really love their life to be like, because now they're going on alone. And she had her children, but bottom line, it was still her life and she got to choose. She didn't have someone telling her what to do. So personal growth, I think, is so important, whatever the situation is. But death has such a strong hold on you if you don't progress through it. Because even in the Bible, it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, it doesn't say I stopped and pitched tent. But many people do. And sometimes they will do that because they're getting sympathy from other people. And it happens. And it's nice that other people care about you. But if you're not progressing, even if it's slow, that's fine. As long as you're progressing forward, you will make it through. You don't forget.
And then you're a new person.
Yeah. And then it's
It's
time to
not going
start
back.
rebuilding.
Yeah, it's not going back. And it, yeah. And it's not just grief too, from, the loss of a death. It could be grief from, an accident that you're coming back from, yeah. And it's that the process. It's a process.
Sure.
I love it. I love it that it
Well,
is a
there's
process.
41 different kinds of loss. If you think about during the pandemic, someone lost their job. That made them lose their house. Possibly it split up their family. And it just kept tumbling on. It's all loss. It's all grief. Any change in your pattern causes grief.
Okay, I think that's a write that one down, folks. Any change of a pattern, your patterns, causes
Mhm.
grief. And I was just, to the people that I coach, it changes to great. Like, this is awesome. It's a change of pattern. And as one of my mentors says, your cellular structure has to catch up to it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's like, oh, okay. And then we say things like, this is your new normal.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't know if I like this. It's very uncomfortable. So let's to talk for a second about growth, allowing new growth. Growth is uncomfortable.
It is. If we're anything that we're not in our comfort zone, we're taking actions, and those are growth ones. And sometimes the paradigms will pull us back because it's familiar, even though it's not good for us. But we have to keep taking those baby steps forward.
Yes.
When I lost John and I didn't have a place to turn, I can look back now and think it was such a loss to me, the love of my life. But if I hadn't gone through that with him, I would not have taken the classes to be licensed as a grief recovery specialist. And I wouldn't be helping people in the same way now.
Ooh, I think that you just hit something on the head. If you had not gone through that with him, I mean, for me, I'm going through something right now where I'm watching, I don't know, I'm watching lifing, right? I guess you could say that.
Yes.
And what I want for another person might not be what they want, right? And I'm coming out of like it's just feels really unreal that there's all this growth happening.
Yeah.
And it's not, we vision, we had it, of course, we're going to see it, but when it happens, it's like, whoa,
Yes.
I, I, I guess this is what it feels like. And there's something about the learning process in that growth.
Yeah.
I just want to,
Think about it, Judy. We don't just go through it. We have to grow through it.
oh, say that one more time, please.
We don't just go through it. We grow through it. So we're picking up those little seeds of knowledge as we go through this path. And sometimes the pathway is a little narrow, sometimes it's a little bit wider. But we have to look for those seeds and be so grateful for what we had. John and I only had 6.5 years. We married later in life. And yes, I would love to have had him longer, but I'm so grateful that he came into my life and showed me what real love was like. And, we have to be grateful in what we have to be able to move forward.
Wow. Wow, this has been great. Well, thank you so much. I want to, one more question is, well, I think it's very beautiful, and I want to honor you for doing the work that you're doing. I'm
Thank you.
serious, very serious. And it's uniquely your work to do because you've
Mm.
lived it. And I would love to ask you, what would you love for us to hold as a community for you? What would you love? Anything. You've
Anything.
got anything.
I think to figure out where I want to land for the rest of my life. I've got stuff farm and everything in Nebraska, and I've got a house down here. And I miss Florida. I was in Florida for 25 years, and I miss it. My friends down there. So I think figuring out just where it is I want to land, and just keep studying, keep growing. I don't ever want to stop studying. Leaders are learners, and connecting with people that think the same way that you do and the same wavelengths. We have masterminds and other coaches and stuff that we don't have to explain anything, because other people in our family don't always understand what we're doing. But when we get around other people that do the same things as us, yeah. But I just want to be able to help more people.
Impact. Yep.
Yeah. Because I was told that, when I was doing just life coaching, I was trying to help everyone. But when I narrowed it down to just the grief mainly, I mean, I'll do the other, yes, but the grief is my main thing. And someone said, that's your calling. Because I've been through it. I understand it. I've lost children, spouses, siblings, fathers, mother. Not that I know it all, but I'm also getting to the age that my family and my friends are getting older too. So it's not if death comes to your house, it's when. And the more you're aware of it, the more prepared you are. Had I not gone through that training with the grief recovery, I wouldn't have been able to handle my sister's death as well as I did, and comfort my brother-in-law, because he was really struggling. So just that I can reach out to more people. That's my number one thing.
All right. Well, here we go. We're going to send energy your way to South Texas. All right. Your job is to receive, receive, receive. We're going to send it down. I say send it down because I'm a little bit north of you right now. And it's coming from all over the world, okay? Straight to you. Got it?
I got it. Thank you, Judy.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. I so appreciate what you're doing, and thank you so much for being a light, the light that we really, really, really needed to hear right now.
If they want to talk to me, can I mention that?
Absolutely.
They can go to my website, patacklie-roth.com/conversation. And that will take them right over onto my calendar, and they can have a free 30-minute conversation at no charge.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, we'll put that down in the comments and fun stuff too.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much. Way to go, Transformation Tuesday. One
Yeah.
more time. And thank you so much for kicking off our month on allowing new growth.
Yeah, we have to be a receiver. If someone just shuts down and said, I'm fine, that fine is usually a signal that they're not fine.
Yeah.
If they need the right person to talk to.
Alrighty then. Well, thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
Bye now.
Aw.